Good evening everyone, Ragewood here, back with another Godforge video. In today's video, we're going through all of the other little leaks and stuff that you might have missed throughout the week. We do have a couple for reaching 45k subscribers on the Fateless YouTube channel, as well as some that were dropped during Simon's raid stream over the weekend. Now, I have also watched the Thursday podcast that came out. And whilst topic of conversation was good between Sham, Saphira, Chizgul, I think his name was, there wasn't really sort of much talk about the Fateless game, so nothing was sort of shown there, if you will. So it might be a shorter one than usual, might not, we'll see how it goes. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So to start with, we'll look at the 45k subscribers sort of spoilers, if you will. Now this first one, you would have seen shared in the Discord on Thanksgiving as well. And this is an image of King Tut's spouse, whose name I that's brilliant English. I struggle a lot to pronounce, so we give us a second, I will bring it up. It is Unkesanaman. That lady. Now, if that name does sound familiar to you, it is because it was in, or mentioned a lot in the original Mummy movies with Brendan Fraser, so a bit of a callback there. But yes, she is King Tut's spouse in history. Very cool looking champ, very sort of stereotypical Egyptian sort of woman look. Does look similar to Cleopatra, although from my recollection, Cleopatra's got more of like emerald sort of green sort of feel, whereas we've got a heavy sort of direction in the blue, as it were, with the sapphire in the headband there, the blue hair, blue eyes, etc. Now, I don't actually know too much about Unkesanamun, but my guess would be she's going to be maybe a rare champion. I don't think she had, I know very little about the character, as it were, but I don't think she had too much impact in the history, if you will, of ancient Egypt, so that's why I think she's going to be a rare character. Abilities, no idea at this point, but it's still excited to find out when it does get dropped. The second picture that was dropped is certainly a lot more spicy. Now, what we have here is, if you can see at the bottom there, the Shrine of Hercules dungeon concept sketch. Now, this is a cool one because so far we've not actually been privy to any sort of dungeon modes or anything like that. The only thing that we have seen that has been confirmed is the Treasure Golem dungeon boss. So the fact that we're seeing some maps is very cool. Now, what we don't know is, unfortunately, is whether this is the Treasure Golem's lair, if you will. Now, there has been some talk that potentially we might have a themed dungeon for every faction. Now, that's not something Fateless have talked about, that's just a few things that I've seen perhaps pop up, because we do know that they want to have sort of 8 to 10 dungeons. So if we go off the assumption that every dungeon in the game is going to be sort of themed on one of the factions, then we can assume that the Treasure Golem is going to be here. He's made of like sort of pillars, if you will, which look very similar to what you've seen on ancient architecture of Greece, like the Parthenon, for example, that sort of shaped design. So if that is the case, this might be it. If it's not, though, this is the second dungeon. You can sort of throw that sort of guess, if you will, that there'll be one dungeon for each themed faction out the window. but still very cool. Now we can see that our champions or our people are sort of stood here, okay, looking out towards the exit of the cavern, if you will. Now, does that mean it's going to be some sort of water creature that we're fighting? Are we going to end up walking around here and fighting on the dock sort of thing? Are we going to go into the ruins there? None of us know. We can only speculate. I don't think we'll be stood in the water somehow. I do think we'll be heading towards the pontoon or working in the ruins. But it's still very cool to see and exciting that we're getting our first sort of look into what some of the dungeons are going to be in the game. If you'd asked me though, do I think this is where the treasure golem's going to hang out, or do I think it's something else? I do think it's going to be something else. The treasure golem, we've been informed, is a very large character, alright? It's going to be significantly bigger than our heroes. And I just can't see a place for him to sort of stand or pose, if you will, to fight. You could have him in the water perhaps, but I don't see why a golem made of temple would be in there, so I do think we are looking at something completely different here. Now, if you want to forget everything I've just said and just read my opinions rather than listen to the dulcet tones of my voice, you can. I have made Rage Gaming live now, mainly because I didn't realise actually quite how expensive making a website would be, at least getting a professional to do it. So I've decided to launch what I've got. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing. I would certainly like it to look better, but until I can afford the $7,000, I think it was, that it's going to cost, we're just going to keep it very simple, like a blog. So only a couple of articles here. I will be updating it throughout the weeks, and as more faction heroes get released to us, I will add them to the pages. Okay. Now, one thing I have put at the top here, throughout all these character pages and things, I do not know the classification of all the heroes, but I am putting them on there just to stay on top of things, alright? Also on here, we started adding some of the CCs that are covering Godforge, so you can click their page, and the Fateless one. Click the image and it'll take you straight through to the YouTube channel. And I've started making a couple of pages on affinities, buffs and debuffs that we've seen so far, and some that we haven't seen, just sort of some guesses that I have made. So be sure to bookmark it, ready for when the game launches. So the other leaks from this week came from Simon's Raid stream. I believe it was quite a big weekend, double chances on an awful lot of things. And in here, once you've had a couple of beers, everyone gets a little bit loose-lipped. And Simon and Rachel certainly are no different. So, and this is the big one, okay? So we have the Tengu low poly. Now, this rare was actually spoiled to us on Tuesday's Fateless video this week, where we saw sort of the 2D concept. But he's obviously moved a lot further on from that, obviously being built in the game, as you can see here. The next one is also another cool one. Now, I believe that this is a character that we're looking at, but I don't believe it's called sexual dimorphism. Now, the thing I like about this is it's very Chinese culture, if you will. Jade was sort of a very big thing, a very precious material sort of back then. And this reminds me of actually, again, one of the newer mummy films where they raise that sort of Chinese emperor, what have you. That sort of jade dragon, jade dog, that sort of thing. Now, as I said, I do think that perhaps this could be a hero character, but it could also just be an environmental piece, if you will. Either way, looks very cool. This part this is the exciting part. This is our first look at a Svarga champion, which is exciting. We know that the Svarga champions were going to be some of the last ones to be made because of the complexity in the gods themselves. Some of them had 4 arms. I think Ganesha, also had an elephant head. And that sort of thing is going to be very hard to build in their current rig. So it's still unknown whether, the gods that did have 4 arms are just going to have the 4 arms in an ultimate, because it takes a lot less stress to make that, if you will, or whether they will have 4 arms all the time. Either way, this is very cool. Now, I did look and scan up the top here to see if there are any names, anything that might give away who this is, and I couldn't find anything. So what we did is we jumped on the internet. So if we head to Wikipedia, all I did was type in sort of Hindu deities, as it were, and it brought up an awful lot. Now, if we go back to the actual screenshot, if you will, it is very toned down, unlike some of the other legendaries that we have seen. So this might not be a legendary character we're looking at. For example, you compare it to Heimdall, it was very over the top, so was Dracula. This is sort of very toned down, so it might be an epic hero we're looking at. But there was something that stuck out to me, and it goes back to the complexity of the Hindi deities. Multiple gods have multiple arms, and some have multiple heads. Now, in the game, rather than making multiple faces, they might do what we see here. Put these multiple faces somewhere else on the character, like down here, okay? And then, in doing that, they're still sort of relating to source material whilst using the creative license, as it were, to make it easier for their game. So then it comes to, well, who has multiple heads? Okay, so for example, Brahma is one of the major deities and is seen as a creator god. And if we hover over this picture here, he's depicted with 4 faces, crowns on them, but he does have 4 arms. My other thought was maybe it's not necessarily a god, but maybe an antagonist like Ravana. Now, if we look at Ravana, he's sort of known as like a demon king, if you will, often depicted with multiple faces, but not the multiple arms. And if we look in various sort of depictions of him, he does have sort of like your standard sort of body, if you will, just has the many faces. So this could be another avenue that Faters have gone down. Could be another character, say, that we're looking at. And rather than a legendary, he could be like an epic hero. So coming back here once more, he does look kind of demonic. We do see the multiple faces as well. So maybe we're looking at Ravana here. Who knows? But either way, it is very exciting to see at least one character now from all of the factions in the game. So there we go. That is all we've got for this week. As I said, you can sort of read some of my thoughts on my new website. I will make posts 2 or 3 times a week as and when new information gets dropped to us. I'll also share my YouTube videos just in here with the embed links in there as well. So, thank you for taking time to watch this, guys. Take care, look after yourselves, work hard, but as always, play harder, and I'll see you in another one soon. Cheers.